The grand hall of the Velrathi Palace stretched higher than any human building Taman had ever seen. Crystal pillars reached toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the clouds themselves. Light danced through the translucent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. He had never imagined such beauty could exist anywhere in the galaxy. Taman stood in formation with 20 other human guards from Earthborn security. His helmet felt heavy on his head, and sweat trickled down his back despite the cool air. This was the biggest assignment of his career. Just 6 months ago, he had been working in a factory on Titan, trying to earn enough money to send home to his mother and younger sister. Now he stood in the throne room of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Commander Jiwan walked in front of the line, her boots clicking against the floor. She had trained them well during the journey to the Velrathi homeworld. She always said the same thing: stay professional, stay alert, and never give the aliens a reason to look down on humans. The Velrathi already thought humans were nothing more than useful servants. One mistake could make things worse for all of humanity. The doors at the far end of the hall opened with a sound like singing crystal. Velrathi nobles entered in a flowing procession. Their skin shimmered with colors that changed as they moved. Blues, purples, and greens rippled across their tall, elegant forms. They wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid light. Taman had seen Velrathi before, but never so many at once. Never one so important. Then she entered. Empress Liara, every Velrathi in the room bowed their heads. The human guards had been instructed to do the same, and Taman lowered his gaze to the floor. But not before he caught a glimpse of her. She was taller than the others, her skin a deep violet that seemed to glow from within. Her eyes were entirely black like pools of midnight. A crown of crystalline structures grew from her head. Natural and beautiful, she moved with a grace that made everything around her seem clumsy. The Empress reached her throne, a massive structure of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. She sat, and the room became silent. A Velrathi official stepped forward and began speaking in their language, which sounded like music and wind chimes. The translation device in Taman's ear turned the words into something he could understand. Your Imperial Majesty, we present the human security detail from the company called Earthborn Security. They will assist our own guards during the summit. Empress Liara's voice was cold and clear. Let me see them. Commander Jiwan stepped forward and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, we are honored to serve. My team consists of Earth's finest security professionals. We will protect this gathering with our lives. Remove your helmets, the Empress said. It was not a request. Jiwan did not hesitate. She reached up and removed her helmet, tucking it under her arm. The other guards followed. Taman was the last in line. He pulled off his helmet and held it properly, just as they had been taught. The cool air of the throne room touched his face. He looked up at the Empress, waiting for her to inspect them and move on with the ceremony. That was what the briefing had said would happen. They would be acknowledged, assigned their positions, and then dismissed. But the Empress was staring at him. Her skin, which had been a steady violet, suddenly flickered through a dozen colors. Red, white, gold, and back to violet. Her black eyes went wide. Her hand gripped the arm of her throne so tightly that cracks appeared in the crystal. The entire court noticed. Velrathi nobles turned to look at what had caused their Empress to react this way. Whispers filled the hall like rustling leaves. Commander Jiwan's expression remained neutral, but Taman could see the tension in her shoulders. Something had gone very wrong. Taman did not understand. He had followed every rule. He had not spoken out of turn or made any inappropriate gesture. He simply stood there holding his helmet, wondering what he had done to cause such a reaction. High Chancellor Vryn, a Velrathi with silver skin and a stern face, stepped closer to the throne. Your Majesty, is something wrong? Empress Liara did not respond immediately. She continued to stare at Taman with an expression he could not read. Was it anger, fear, recognition? That last thought made no sense. The Empress of the Velrathi Empire could not possibly know a simple human guard from Titan. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but in the silent hall everyone heard it clearly. What is your name? The question was directed at Taman. He swallowed hard. Taman, Your Majesty. Private Taman of Earthborn Security. Where are you from? The Soul Colony on Titan, Your Majesty. Your family. Tell me about your family. This was getting stranger. Commander Jiwan looked ready to intervene, but the Empress raised one long-fingered hand, stopping her. Taman's mind raced. Why would the Empress care about his family? My mother works in agricultural systems, Your Majesty. My father died when I was young. I have a younger sister in university. My grandparents live on Earth in the old city of Busan, and before them, your ancestors. Taman felt confused. I don't know much, Your Majesty. My great-grandfather disappeared during the First Contact Wars. He was a soldier. We were told he died in combat, but his body was never recovered. The colors on the Empress's skin shifted again. This time they moved more slowly, like clouds drifting across a sunset. She stood from her throne, and every Velrathi in the room seemed to hold their breath. Empresses did not stand during formal presentations. It was not proper protocol. Everyone leave, she said. Her voice was different now, less cold, more uncertain. Clear the hall, now. High Chancellor Vryn stepped forward. Your Majesty, the ceremony is postponed. Her tone left no room for argument. I will speak with this human, alone. The Velrathi nobles looked at each other in confusion and concern, but they began to file out of the hall. Commander Jiwon moved toward Taman, clearly intending to stay with him, but the Empress shook her head. The guard stays. Everyone else leaves. That includes you, Commander. Jiwon's jaw tightened, but she could not refuse a direct order from the Empress. She looked at Taman, and he could see the worry in her eyes. Stay calm, she said quietly. Answer her questions honestly. I'll be right outside. As the last of the Velrathi left the hall, the enormous doors closed with a final crystalline note. Taman stood alone in the vast space with the most powerful being in the galaxy. His heart pounded in his chest. The Empress descended from her throne, walking toward him with slow, measured steps. She stopped just a few feet away, studying his face with an intensity that made him want to look away. But he held her gaze. Something his mother had always told him echoed in his mind. Never show fear, even when you feel it. It cannot be, the Empress whispered, more to herself than to him. But you have his face. Exactly his face. Your Majesty, I don't understand. She raised her hand again, silencing him. Then she touched a device on her wrist, and a holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed a group of human soldiers, dirty and exhausted, standing in what looked like a prison cell. The image was old, the quality poor, but Taman could make out their faces. His blood turned to ice. One of the men in the center of the image could have been his reflection. The same eyes, the same shape of his face, even the same scar on his left eyebrow that Taman had gotten as a child. This human, the Empress said, pointing at the image, was a prisoner here 300 years ago. We called him the Defiant One. I interrogated him myself. He was impossible to break. Her voice carried something Taman had never expected to hear from a Velrathi ruler. Respect. That cannot be me, Taman said. 300 years ago I was not even born. I know. The Empress's skin flickered with colors again. But you are connected to him. You must be. The resemblance is too perfect to be coincidence. She looked at him with those endless black eyes. I need to know who you are, Taman of Titan. I need to understand why you have come here wearing the face of a ghost from my past. Taman's mind reeled. His great-grandfather had disappeared during the First Contact Wars. Could it be possible? Could that man in the hologram be his ancestor? The Empress stepped back and gestured toward a door hidden behind her throne. Come with me. We have much to discuss and very little time. There are forces in this empire who would not understand what I am about to do. She paused. I am going to help you remember something that happened before you were born, and then perhaps we will both understand why fate has brought you to my palace. The hidden chamber was nothing like the grand throne room. It was smaller, quieter, and filled with strange devices that hummed with soft energy. Taman followed the Empress through corridors that seemed carved from a single piece of crystal. His hand instinctively moved to his weapon, but he knew it would be useless against her if she meant him harm. Commander Jiwon had tried to follow them, but Velrathi guards blocked her path. Taman caught one last glimpse of her face tight with worry before the doors sealed shut. He was truly alone with the Empress now, deep in the heart of the palace where no human had likely ever walked. The Empress stopped in a circular room where symbols glowed on the walls. She touched a panel, and the symbols rearranged themselves into new patterns. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair that rose from the floor. It was clearly designed for Velrathi, too large for his human frame, but he sat anyway. She stood in front of him, her tall form casting a shadow despite the gentle light filling the room. For a long moment, she simply stared at him. Her skin continued to shift colors, something Taman understood meant she was experiencing strong emotions. Among Velrathi, showing such visible feeling was considered improper. Yet here was the Empress, apparently unable to control herself. "You said your great-grandfather was named Minho," she said finally. "Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Minho of the Soul Regiment. That is what my grandmother told me." The Empress closed her black eyes. "Minho. Yes. That was his name." She opened her eyes again, and Taman could swear he saw something like pain in them. "Do you know what happened to him?" "Only that he was captured by Velrathi forces and never came home. My family assumed he died in captivity. Many humans did during those years. He did not die." The Empress moved to a table where several objects were arranged. She picked up a small cube that glowed with inner light. "At least not in my custody. What I'm about to tell you is a secret I have kept for 300 years. If the High Council learned of it, I would face charges of treason." Taman's throat felt dry. "Why are you telling me?" "Because I need to know if you are truly his descendant. And if you are, I need to understand what it means that you are here." She held up the cube. "This device contains my personal memories from that time. The Velrathi can store memories in physical form. It is one of our oldest technologies." She touched the cube to her forehead, and suddenly the room filled with images. Taman found himself looking at holographic scenes from the past, vivid and real. He saw a younger version of the Empress, her skin a brighter violet, standing in a detention cell. And there, chained to the wall, was the man from the earlier image, his great-grandfather, Minho. The holographic memory played out before him. He could hear their voices, though they seemed distant and echoed strangely. "You will tell me where your command center is located," the young Empress said in the memory. Her voice was harder then, colder. Minho raised his head. Even battered and exhausted, there was strength in his eyes. "No, I can make you tell me. We have methods, and I know. You have already tried several. They did not work." In the present, the Empress spoke quietly. "I interrogated him for 6 weeks. I used every technique we possessed. He never broke. Never gave up a single piece of useful information." Her skin flickered with colors that Taman was learning to read. Respect, admiration, perhaps even shame. The memory continued. Taman watched as days passed in the detention cell. But something changed. The interrogations became conversations. The Empress would arrive not with guards and torture devices, but with food and water. She would sit across from Minho and they would talk. "Why do you resist?" the memory Empress asked. "Your people are losing this war. Surrender is inevitable." Minho smiled, though his lips were cracked and bleeding. "Because every day I resist is another day my people have to find a way to survive. Every question I do not answer is one more piece of information you do not have. It matters. You are one man. One insignificant human. Yes. And if one insignificant human can stand against the entire Velrathi Empire, what does that say about my species? What does it say about yours?" The present Empress stopped the memory. That conversation changed everything for me. I had been taught that humans were primitive, weak, easily controlled. But this man, chained and broken in body, was stronger than any Velrathi I had ever met. Not stronger in power, but in will, in spirit. Taman watched as she set down the memory cube. We continued to talk. He told me about Earth, about human history, about struggles and triumphs. He told me about his family. He had a wife and a young son. He showed me that humans were not the simple creatures we believed them to be. "What happened to him?" Taman asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The Empress's skin turned a dark blue, a color that seemed to indicate sadness. "I let him escape. I arranged for a guard rotation gap, disabled certain security systems, and left his cell door accessible. Then I turned away and pretended not to notice. It was treason. It went against everything I had been taught, everything I believed about duty and loyalty." She looked directly at Taman, but he had shown me a truth I could not ignore. The Velrathi Empire was built on the belief that we were superior to all other species, that our rule was justified because we were better, but if a human could stand against me, could make me question my own beliefs, then perhaps we were not so superior after all. Taman felt his hands trembling. "Did he make it back to human territory?" "I do not know. I never heard of him again, I hoped he survived, found his family, lived the rest of his life in peace. But the war continued for many more years. Many humans died. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I have wondered every day since whether my one act of mercy meant anything at all. She activated another device and a screen appeared showing complex data. This is your genetic profile scanned when you entered the palace. All visitors are scanned, though most do not know it. I had it analyzed while we walked here. She pointed to markers in the data. You share 23% genetic material with the man I knew as Minho. That is consistent with a great-grandchild relationship. Taman stared at the screen. It was real. The man who had stood against the Empress, who had somehow changed her mind about humanity, was his ancestor. Pride and grief mixed in his chest. Pride that his family came from such strength, and grief that he had never known this story, never heard his great-grandfather's name spoken with the honor it deserved. Why did you never tell anyone? He asked. If he changed your mind, if he made you see humans differently, why not share that? The Empress's laugh was bitter. Because I am the Empress. I cannot simply announce that everything we built our empire upon is a lie. The High Council, the military, the noble houses, they all believe in Velrathi supremacy. It is the foundation of our society. She sat down in a chair that formed from the floor. I have worked for 3 centuries to slowly change that belief, to push for better treatment of humans, to support policies that give your species more rights and opportunities. But I must do it carefully, slowly, or I will be removed from power and replaced with someone who will undo everything. Taman began to understand the weight she had carried, and now I appear wearing his face. Yes, and I do not believe in coincidence. The universe has brought you here for a reason. She stood again, moving closer to him. I want to perform a procedure. It is called memory threading. It allows a Velrathi to connect with the genetic memory stored in another being's cells. It is possible that traces of your great-grandfather's experiences are encoded in your very body. What are the risks? The procedure is designed for Velrathi. Using it on a human could cause pain, possibly damage your mind. You might see things that are difficult to bear, or you might see nothing at all, and suffer for no reason. Taman thought of his mother working long hours in the agricultural domes of Titan. He thought of his sister, studying hard to become a doctor. He thought of all the humans across the galaxy who lived under Velrathi rule, always seen as lesser, always struggling to prove their worth. If there is a chance that this could help humanity, I will do it. The Empress's skin shifted to a warm gold color. Approval. You are like him. That same willingness to endure pain for something greater than yourself. She moved to a cabinet and removed several items. This will take time. The procedure cannot be rushed. And there is another complication. What complication? High Chancellor Vryn. He has always been suspicious of my policies toward humans. My reaction to you in the throne room will have alarmed him. He will investigate. She looked at Taman seriously. If he discovers what I did 300 years ago, he will move against me. And if he moves against me, it will mean war within the Empire. Thousands, perhaps millions, will die. Taman felt the weight of that knowledge settle on his shoulders. Then we need to move quickly. Yes. The Empress began preparing the equipment. I am trusting you with my greatest secret, Taman of Titan. I am trusting you with my life and the future of the Empire. I hope I am right to do so. As she placed electrodes on his temples and activated machines he did not understand, Taman thought of his great-grandfather, alone in a cell, refusing to break. If Minho could face torture and imprisonment without giving up, Taman could face this unknown procedure. The Empress placed her hands on either side of his head. Her skin was surprisingly warm. Close you. Taman woke to soft light and the smell of something sweet in the air. His head throbbed with a dull ache that seemed to pulse behind his eyes. For a moment he could not remember where he was. Then it all came rushing back. The throne room. The Empress. The memory threading procedure. He sat up slowly and found himself lying on a soft surface in the same chamber where the procedure had taken place. The Empress sat nearby, her skin a pale gray color that suggested exhaustion. She looked up when he moved. You survived. Good. I was not certain you would. There was relief in her voice. How long was I unconscious? 4 hours. Your mind fought the connection more than I expected. Human brains are structured differently from ours. The procedure was more difficult than I anticipated. She stood and brought him a cup of liquid. "Drink this. It will help with the pain." Taman drank. The liquid tasted like cold rain and made his headache fade to a tolerable level. Did it work? Did you see his memories? Yes. And you did too, though you may not remember all of it clearly. The Empress sat down again, and for the first time Taman saw her looking truly tired. Your great-grandfather was extraordinary, but you already knew that. The memories were there, Taman realized. Fragments and flashes like dreams he could half remember. He recalled the feeling of chains on his wrists, the taste of blood in his mouth, the determination to stay silent no matter what they did to him. But there was something else too. Something warm. He cared about you, Taman said suddenly, looking at the Empress. In the end, he cared about you. Her skin flickered through several colors quickly. The feeling was mutual. Which is why I let him go. She stood and walked to the wall, touching it gently. The memories showed me something I had forgotten. In our last conversation before his escape, he made me a promise. He said he would find a way to change the galaxy's view of humanity. He said his people would prove themselves worthy of respect, not through conquest but through their actions. And we have, Taman said. Humans have spread across the galaxy. We have built colonies, created art, made scientific discoveries. We have earned our place. Yes, but the Velrathi Empire has been slow to acknowledge it. The Empress turned to face him. I have tried to push for change, but there are powerful forces that resist. High Chancellor Vryn and others like him believe that admitting humans are equals would weaken the Empire. They fear what they do not control. A soft chime interrupted them. The Empress touched a panel on her wrist and a holographic image of a Velrathi guard appeared. Your Majesty, the High Chancellor requests an audience. He says it is urgent. The Empress's skin turned dark red for a moment before she controlled it back to violet. Tell him I will meet him in 1 hour in the diplomatic chamber. The image vanished. The Empress looked at Taman with an expression he was learning to read as concern. It begins. He will question my behavior in the throne room. He will demand explanations. What will you tell him? I do not know yet. She moved toward the door. You must return to your unit. Commander Jiwan will be worried. But first I need to warn you about something. What? The memory threading has created a connection between us. It is a side effect of the procedure. You may find that you can sense my emotions at times, and I may sense yours. The bond will fade with time, but for now, it exists. Taman felt something strange in his mind, like a second heartbeat that was not his own. I can feel you. Your worry? Yes, and I can feel your determination. It is very similar to what I felt from Minho all those years ago. She opened the door. Go now. Speak to no one about what happened here. If Vryn learns the truth, it will be dangerous for both of us. Taman followed her through the corridors, his mind racing. The bond she mentioned was real. He could sense her presence like a distant light in darkness. When they reached a main hallway where Velrathi guards stood watch, she stopped. Take him to the human quarters, she ordered the guards. Then to Taman, she said formally, Thank you for your cooperation, guard. Your testimony has been noted. It was for the benefit of the guards, Taman understood, making it seem like a simple interview rather than what it truly was. He bowed and followed the Velrathi guards as they led him away. Commander Jiwan was waiting when he arrived at the human quarters. She grabbed his arm the moment the Velrathi guards left. What happened? Are you hurt? Did she threaten you? I'm fine, Commander. She just had questions about my family history. Jiwan's eyes narrowed. For 4 hours. It was complicated. Before she could press further, another human guard approached. His name was Hyunwoo, and he had become Taman's closest friend during their training. Hey, you are alive. We were worried. The Empress cleared the entire throne room just to talk to you. That is not normal. Nothing about this assignment is normal, Taman said, trying to sound casual, but inside his mind was spinning with everything he had learned. His great-grandfather had been tortured in this very palace. The Empress had committed treason to save him. And now, 300 years later, Taman stood here wearing his ancestor's face. That night, Taman lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. The other guards were sleeping, their soft breathing filling the darkened room. But he could not sleep. His head still ached from the procedure, and the strange bond with the Empress made him aware of her presence somewhere in the palace. She was not sleeping either. She was worried. Through the bond, he could feel her anxiety growing. Something was wrong. He sat up, every instinct telling him to stay alert. And then alarms began to sound throughout the palace. Jiwan was up instantly, shouting orders. "Everyone up, full gear. Something is happening." The guards scrambled into their equipment. Taemin pulled on his armor and grabbed his weapon, following the others as they rushed into the hallway. Velrathi guards ran past them, and through windows, Taemin could see ships hovering outside the palace. A Velrathi officer stopped near Jiwan. "Return to your quarters. This is an internal matter. What is happening?" "High Chancellor Vryn has called an emergency session of the High Council. The Empress is being questioned." The officer ran off before Jiwan could ask more. Taemin felt a spike of fear through the bond, and he knew it was not his own emotion. The Empress was afraid. Vryn had moved faster than expected. "We need to stay out of this," Jiwan said to her team. "Whatever is happening between the Velrathi, it is not our concern." But Taemin knew she was wrong. This was about him, about his great-grandfather, about the secret the Empress had kept for 3 centuries. Through the bond, he could sense her being taken somewhere, could feel her struggling to maintain composure as Vryn accused her of something. He had to know what was happening. Without thinking it through, Taemin slipped away from the group while they were distracted. He moved through corridors he half remembered from the memory threading, following the pull of the bond toward where the Empress was being held. He found his way to a balcony overlooking a great chamber. Below, the High Council had assembled. Dozens of Velrathi in elaborate robes sat in a circle around the Empress, who stood in the center. Their skin colors were all dark, showing anger and suspicion. High Chancellor Vryn stood nearby, his silver skin almost white with intensity. "You helped a human prisoner escape during the First Contact Wars. This is treason." The entire council reacted with shock. Their skin colors flashed through patterns of disbelief and outrage. The Empress stood perfectly still, her expression neutral. "These are serious accusations, Chancellor. What evidence do you have?" Vryn activated a holographic display. "I accessed the old security logs from the detention level. 300 years ago, there was a gap in surveillance during the exact time a human prisoner vanished. That gap was created by someone with high-level access, someone like you. Security failures happened often during the war. This proves nothing, perhaps not alone, but combined with your behavior today, it suggests a pattern. You saw a human guard who resembles that escaped prisoner, and you reacted with visible shock. Then you dismissed the entire court to speak with him privately." Vryn moved closer. "What did you discuss with that human, Your Majesty? What does he know?" The Empress's skin remained steady violet, showing no emotion. "I discussed his family history. I was curious about whether he might be related to prisoners from the war. That is all." "I do not believe you." From his hidden position, Taemin watched as the council members whispered among themselves. Some seemed inclined to believe the Empress, but others looked convinced by Vryn's accusations. The political balance was delicate. Then Vryn played his final card. "I propose we subject the Empress to a truth reading. If she has nothing to hide, she will allow the council to examine her recent memories." The Empress's skin flickered, just for a moment. Taemin felt her fear spike through the bond. A truth reading would reveal everything, including the memory-threading procedure they had performed. It would expose not just her treason from the past, but her continuing contact with a human who carried forbidden knowledge. "That is not necessary," the Empress said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Then you refuse? That itself suggests guilt." Vryn smiled, showing teeth. "Your Majesty, you have ruled for 8 centuries. You have been a strong leader. But if you have Betra..." The detention cell was cold and dark, much like the one Minho had been held in 3 centuries before. Taemin sat on the hard floor, his hands bound with energy restraints that hummed with power. The guards had not been gentle when they dragged him away from the council chamber. His shoulder ached where one of them had struck him, but the physical pain was nothing compared to what he felt through the bond with the Empress. Her anguish was like a knife in his mind. She blamed herself for his capture, and he could not reach out to comfort her. The bond only went one way when emotions were strong. Hours passed. Or maybe it was days. Time felt strange in the darkness. Taemin dozed fitfully, his body exhausted from the memory threading and the stress of the situation. He dreamed of Minho, of sitting in this same cell enduring torture and refusing to break. If his great-grandfather could survive this, so could he. The door opened with a hiss. Light flooded in, blinding him momentarily. When his eyes adjusted, he saw Commander Jiwan standing there with 2 Velrathi guards. Her face was tight with controlled fury. "On your feet, soldier," she said. Taman stood, his legs stiff from sitting. The guards deactivated his restraints and pulled him out of the cell. They led him through corridors he did not recognize, deeper into the palace structure. Jiwan walked beside him, not looking at him, her jaw clenched. "Commander, Quiet. Save it for the trial." Trial. The Empress invoked an ancient rite. Trial by revelation. The entire High Council and the Eternal Archive will hear testimony. Jiwan finally looked at him. "Whatever you know, whatever you think you are protecting, you are about to have to share it with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I hope you are ready." They entered a vast chamber Taman had not seen before. The ceiling was a dome of pure crystal that showed the stars beyond. In the center of the room was a platform surrounded by the High Council members. The Empress stood on the platform, her hands also bound with energy restraints. Her skin was a dull gray, showing exhaustion and defeat. But when she saw Taman enter, her color brightened slightly. Through the bond, he felt her concern for him, and beneath that, a strange sense of gratitude. She had not wanted him to sacrifice himself, but now that he had, she was determined to make it mean something. High Chancellor Vryn stood before the assembled council. "We are gathered to judge Empress Liara on charges of treason. She aided an enemy combatant during the First Contact Wars, an act that violates the most sacred laws of our empire. Furthermore, she has concealed this crime for 300 years. The air above the platform shimmered and something appeared. It was not quite physical, more like a presence that filled the space with weight and power. The Eternal Archive, Taman realized, the collected consciousness of every past Velrathi ruler, stored in their advanced technology and called upon in moments of great importance. A voice spoke, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "The accused may present her defense." The Empress stepped forward, her restraints glowing. "I do not deny the facts. 300 years ago, I allowed a human prisoner named Minho to escape. It was a violation of my duty. It was treason." Her voice was clear and strong despite her circumstances, but I did it because that human showed me a truth our empire had refused to see. "What truth?" The voice of the archive was neither kind nor cruel, simply curious. That humanity is not inferior, that our belief in Velrathi supremacy is not absolute law but a choice we make, and that choice was leading us down a path of endless war and destruction. The Empress looked around at the council members. Minho endured 6 weeks of interrogation without breaking. Not because he was strong in body, but because he had something we did not understand. Purpose, love for his people, willingness to suffer for something greater than himself. Vryn interrupted. "This is sentiment, not defense. You betrayed the Empire for emotional weakness, did I?" The Empress's skin flashed with anger. "After Minho escaped, I began to subtly change our war strategy. I prevented 3 major operations that would have killed millions of humans, but would have also cost us dearly. I advocated for the peace accords that ended the war. Because of my actions, humanity survived and became our partners instead of our slaves." The council erupted in whispers. Several members looked shocked, others outraged. Vryn's silver skin turned almost black with rage. "You admit to sabotage, to deliberately undermining our military objectives?" "I admit to saving the Empire from itself. If we had destroyed humanity completely, we would have become monsters. The Eternal Archive itself has records of civilizations that fell because they could not see beyond their own supremacy. I refuse to let that be our fate." The voice of the archive spoke again. "This is a grave claim. You say you saved the Empire by betraying it?" "Yes. And what of the human who stands before us now? What is his role?" Taman felt all eyes turned to him. The Empress gestured toward him. "He is Minho's great-grandson. He carries his ancestors' genetic memory. Through him, I was able to confirm what I have always believed, that humans are worthy of respect, worthy of standing as equals." Vryn moved toward Taman with menace in his posture. "Let us hear from this human, then. Tell the council what the Empress did to you, how she manipulated you with forbidden memory procedures, how she used you to justify her ancient crime." Taman took a deep breath. Every person in this room could order his death, but his great-grandfather had faced worse. He straightened his shoulders and spoke clearly. "She did not manipulate me. I volunteered for the memory threading. And what I learned was that my great-grandfather met the Empress at a moment when both of them could have chosen hate. Instead, they chose understanding. Minho showed her that humans were not the enemy. She showed him that Velrathi were not all monsters. He turned to address the council directly. You ask why this matters now? Because the galaxy is changing. Humans are not the weak species you remember from 300 years ago. We have built colonies, developed technology, and proven ourselves in countless ways. But we did not do it by conquering. We did it by surviving, by adapting, by learning from those stronger than us. Enough of this, Vryn said. The human speaks pretty words, but they do not change the facts. The Empress committed treason. She must face the consequences. Before anyone could respond, alarms began to sound throughout the palace. A Velrathi officer rushed into the chamber, her skin flashing urgent red. High Chancellor, we are under attack! The purifiers have seized the military garrison and are demanding the Empress's immediate execution. The council erupted in chaos. The purifiers were an extremist faction within the Velrathi military that believed in absolute supremacy over all other species. They had been growing in power, fed by those who feared the Empire was growing too soft. Vryn's expression showed shock, then something else. Calculation. Had he known this would happen? Had he coordinated with the purifiers, thinking their coup would succeed? The Empress's restraints deactivated. She moved with sudden authority, her skin shifting to commanding violet. This is what happens when we cling to old hatreds. The purifiers want to take us back to an age of endless war. Explosions shook the palace. Through the crystal dome, Taman could see ships firing on the structure. Velrathi guards rushed in, forming protective circles around the council members. Commander G1 grabbed Taman's arm. We need to get you out of here. No. Taman pulled away. If the purifiers take the palace, they will kill the Empress. They will kill all humans in Velrathi space. We have to stop them. We are 20 human guards against an army. Then we need to even the odds. Taman looked at the Empress. Through the bond, he felt her making a decision. A choice that terrified her but also gave her strength. Your Majesty, you said my great-grandfather's escape meant something. Prove it. Let humans fight alongside Velrathi to defend this palace. Show the council that we are partners, not servants. The Empress met his eyes. For a moment, the bond between them sang with shared purpose. Then she turned to the council. I invoke emergency powers. All forces, human and Velrathi, are to defend the palace against the purifiers. This is not a debate. This is survival. Vryn stepped forward. You cannot... The voice of the Eternal Archive cut through everything else. The Empress acts within her authority. The purifiers threaten not just her rule but the stability of the Empire. All loyal forces will defend against this coup. G1 was already activating her communication device, calling the other human guards. All units, combat stations. We are authorized to engage hostile forces. Protect the palace. As the council members scattered to fortified positions, Taman found himself fighting alongside the Empress. She moved with fluid grace. Using technology he barely understood to shield them from incoming fire. Through windows he could see Velrathi and human forces beginning to coordinate, defending the palace together. Hyunwoo appeared, breathing hard, his weapon ready. Never thought I would fight alongside the aliens, he said with a grim smile. Times change, Taman replied. They moved through corridors as the battle raged. The purifiers had superior numbers, but the loyalist forces had defensive positions and coordination. Taman saw Velrathi guards protecting human soldiers, saw G1 directing mixed teams with the authority of a natural leader. Then they encountered a group of purifier soldiers in the main hallway. The leader, a massive Velrathi with skin the color of dried blood. The crystal throne room was damaged but still standing. Scorch marks covered the beautiful walls where energy weapons had struck. Bodies of both purifiers and loyalists lay covered with ceremonial cloths. The battle had lasted 6 hours and cost hundreds of lives. But the palace had held. Taman stood at attention with the remaining human guards. They were exhausted, wounded, but alive. Hyunwoo's body rested on a platform at the front of the room, honored alongside fallen Velrathi soldiers. It was the first time in history that a human had been given such recognition. The High Council had reassembled, though several seats were empty. Some members had been injured in the fighting. Others had fled or been revealed as purifier sympathizers. High Chancellor Vryn stood in restraints, his silver skin dull with shame. Evidence had emerged that he had known about the coup and allowed it to proceed, thinking it would remove the Empress. Empress Liara stood before her throne, but she had not sat. She looked tired but strong, her skin a steady violet that showed determination. Around her, the air shimmered with the presence of the eternal archive, called forth to witness what was about to happen. "The purifiers have been defeated," the Empress said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "But they were not defeated by Velrathi alone. Humans fought beside us. Humans died protecting us. This cannot be ignored." One of the council members, an elderly Velrathi named Cora with pale blue skin, spoke. "Your Majesty, we witnessed the human guard sacrifice himself for you. It was honorable. But does one act of bravery change centuries of tradition?" The Empress turned to Taman. "Come forward." He stepped out of formation, aware of every eye on him. His body ached from the battle and his heart still hurt from Hyunwoo's death. But he walked steadily to stand beside the Empress. She touched the device on her wrist and holographic images filled the air. 300 years ago, a human named Minho was brought before me as a prisoner. I was young then, certain of Velrathi's superiority, convinced that humans were nothing more than a primitive species to be controlled. The images showed Minho's interrogation, the cell where he had been kept. The council watched in silence. Some had heard rumors of this, but seeing it was different. I used every method we possessed to break him. I failed. Not because our methods were inadequate, but because he possessed something I did not understand. Purpose that went beyond self-preservation, love for his species that made pain meaningless. And through our conversations, he taught me to see humans as more than we had believed. The images shifted, showing the moment when young Liara had arranged Minho's escape. Several council members gasped. Even those who had heard Vrin's accusations had not seen actual proof until now. I committed treason. I let him escape. And in the 300 years since, I have worked to change this empire from within, slowly pushing us toward a future where we do not need to dominate other species to feel secure. "Why reveal this now?" Cora asked. "You could have kept this secret forever." "Because secrets have power only when they remain hidden. Once exposed, they can either destroy us or free us. And because fate brought me Minho's great-grandson." The Empress placed her hand on Taman's shoulder. "When I saw his face, I knew the universe was offering us a choice. Continue the lies or finally embrace the truth." The voice of the eternal archive spoke, that omnipresent sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You claim this human changed you. Prove it." The Empress stepped back and closed her eyes. Her skin began to glow with an intense light that grew brighter and brighter. Taman had to look away as the radiance became blinding. When he could look again, the Empress was different. Her form seemed to contain multiples, like looking at dozens of people standing in the same space. Her voice when she spoke was layered with hundreds of other voices. "I am Liara, bearer of the eternal archive. I call upon all who came before me to witness this moment." Taman realized what she had done. She had directly channeled the consciousness of every past Velrathi ruler, becoming a vessel for the accumulated wisdom and power of her entire civilization. It was a desperate act, one that could burn out her mind if she held it too long. The multiplied voice spoke again, addressing the council and all those watching. "For 800 years, the Velrathi Empire has ruled this part of the galaxy. We believed our supremacy was natural law, that we were destined to stand above all others. But this belief was never tested. We dominated because we could, not because we were truly superior." Images appeared in the air, pulled from the archive's infinite memory. Great civilizations that had fallen throughout galactic history, all of them destroyed by their own pride and refusal to adapt. The Krethix Empire, which believed no species could challenge them, destroyed by their own client races when those races finally united. The Norvathi Collective, which enslaved all other life, collapsed when they could no longer maintain control through fear alone. The Vishtari dynasty, which genetically modified themselves to be perfect, died out because they lost the ability to adapt to change. The images shifted to show the Velrathi Empire at its height, grand and powerful. Then they showed possible futures, branching paths. In one, the Velrathi continued their supremacy, growing more rigid and isolated until they too collapsed. In another, they opened their empire to partnership, becoming stronger through diversity. The human Minho showed Liara a path we had not considered, and through the centuries she has guided us toward it, working within tradition while slowly changing our culture. The purifiers represented the old way, the refusal to change. Their defeat proves that path leads only to destruction. The Empress, still glowing with archive power, turned to Taman. "Through memory threading, I experienced what Minho left in his descendants' genetic memory. I felt his determination, his hope, his belief that humans would one day stand as equals. And I felt his final thoughts before his death. This was new information. Taman leaned forward. He died? Yes, 2 years after his escape in a battle defending a human colony. But before he died, he thought of me. He hoped that the seed of change he had planted would grow. The multiplied voices softened with emotion. He believed in me. A human prisoner believed that a Velrathi Empress could become better than she was. The archive presence pulsed with energy. This is the judgment. Empress Liara committed treason under the laws of her time. But her crime prevented a greater tragedy. By preserving humanity, she preserved the Empire's future. Therefore, she is pardoned for past actions and commanded to complete the work she began. High Chancellor Vryn, still in restraints, shouted out, "This is madness. You would reshape our entire civilization based on one human prisoner's influence?" The archive-possessed Empress turned to him. "We would reshape our civilization based on truth. The purifiers are defeated, but the beliefs that created them still exist in our empire. If we do not change, others will rise to take their place, and eventually they will succeed." Cora stood, her blue skin shifting through thoughtful colors. "What change do you propose, Your Majesty?" The Empress raised her glowing hands. "I propose the Minho Accord, named for the human who first showed us a better way. The Velrathi Empire will be restructured into the Velrathi Federation. All species within our territory will have equal representation. Humans, Velrathi, and others will stand together not as rulers and subjects, but as partners." The council erupted in discussion. Some members looked excited, others horrified. Taman watched as centuries of tradition clashed with the possibility of something new. "And if we refuse?" one council member asked. "Then the archive itself will remove me from power and you will face the future alone. But know this, humanity is not what we remember from 300 years ago. They have built their own fleets, developed their own technology. If we do not partner with them willingly, they will eventually challenge us by force. Better to build something together than to fight over scraps of a dying empire." Through the bond, Taman felt the immense strain the archive possession was putting on the Empress. She could not hold this form much longer. He stepped forward, addressing the council directly. "I am just a guard, nobody important. But I carry the memory of a man who believed species could be better than their worst instincts. My great-grandfather could have hated all Velrathi after what he endured. Instead, he saw one Velrathi who was willing to change, and he gave her hope. That is what humans do. We endure, we adapt, and we believe that tomorrow can be better than today." He gestured to where Hyunwoo's body lay. "My friend died protecting the Empress, not because she ordered him to, but because he chose to. That is the future we could build. One where we choose to protect each other not because we must, but because we believe it is right." The archive presence pulsed one final time. "The judgment is made. The Minho Accord will be established. Those who stand with this decision will help build a new future. Those who stand against it will be removed from power. Choose now." One by one, council members stood and placed their hands over their hearts. The Velrathi gesture of agreement. Some did it eagerly, others reluctantly, but all knew the archive had spoken. To defy it was to defy every ruler who had come before. When the Lassie,